Hello everyone out in the internet land. I am trying to fix my Samsung refrigerator, which is leaking water. Let's see if I can zoom in here. So there's my model number. It's a Samsung RF263BEAESR refrigerator. It's the French door stainless steel with the one big pull-out bottom there. So for the last couple of months, we have been experiencing some water collecting up underneath our Cool Select pantry door. And at first I thought maybe that since the temperature was on 34 degrees, it might have been cooling it just enough to have a little bit of condensation freeze up down there. Well, as the months went by, we kept having to pull this drawer out, get some towels, clean it up. You can see some water here from where I've been defrosting, and that's usually where it would leak out. And then we would have this nice little puddle sitting right down here on the tile. So I've looked on the internet for quite some time and tried to find a video or some help for my particular model refrigerator and could not find it. I don't know if this model is still in use, if it's still being sold. I doubt it. This fridge is 2 years old, so I know the models move by pretty fast. So I figured I'd make a quick video showing you how to take this back panel off, because that was probably the most daunting task of this whole thing. The fix is pretty simple. So the first thing you have to do is take all of the, you have to clean your fridge out. Obviously I haven't cleaned it out all the way. I'm hoping to do this in an amount of time where, hot sauce and things like that don't go bad. So you have to take all of the food out, take all of the drawers out above the Cool Select pantry. You don't have to take the water filter out. I found that out later. So most of them are pretty straightforward. They just lift up and pull out, or in this case, you can just, if you have some like this, you can just flip them up. Make sure you take out all the ice in your ice maker, because it'll probably start leaking if you don't, because you're not going to be able to do this in enough time. The hardest drawer to take out were the two crisper drawers that go here and here. There's a glass part that sits on top. That's actually right here on top of this basket. That just lifts up and pulls out. That was pretty simple. And what you have to do to get the actual drawer part out is there's these two little clips. They sit right here into these little grooves. And what you'll have to do is you'll have to mash both sides. See if you can see it. You have to mash that in. And when you mash that in, this drawer can then lift up and be taken out. So you have to take that out first, because that drawer and this top shelf hide these screw holes right here. There's two. See, you got one here and one here that sit directly behind the crisper drawers. And then you've got one screw here that sits right on top of the water filter. And you can see those here. That's the water filter screw. And then that's the two screws that are sitting behind the crisper drawers. So then there is a metal bracket that runs here that holds the top shelves in place. There's a little white square, this one, that hides this last screw. You have to take that out or this back panel will not lift out. So I just got a butter knife and just picked at this, and it popped right out, and no problems. And then that was the last screw. So there's 4 screws in this thing that you have to take out, or this back panel will not come off. So after that, I don't know if you can see this. There's not a lot of light in here. After you take those 4 screws out, and maybe you can barely see this, they have these little arrow tabs. I don't know if my phone's going to focus in on that or not. But they have these little arrow tabs on the side, and it looks like there's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's going to be 4 on each side. So there's 8 total. That's just where the panel, they've got little plastic tabs back behind those arrows, and that seats into the back wall of the refrigerator just to help lock this thing in place. You have to, I wasn't necessarily too careful. Once I got the screws out of the bottom and the screw out of the middle, you can kind of pick it up away from the refrigerator wall, and you just kind of run your fingers up behind it and pop those little plastic tabs out. So it was pretty simple. Probably the hardest part was knowing exactly when this thing was going to free up and remove out from the back wall of the refrigerator. So once again, hit the internet, started looking around, and found an article from a guy who fixes refrigerators, and said that if you're having this problem with the water draining, probably what has happened also is the styrofoam that is affixed to the back of this little panel is frozen to the cooling coils on the back of your refrigerator. And that was my problem. So it was coming out. I could pull it out fairly easily up to about this corner here and over here, and then after that it didn't want to break loose. So he said to take everything out of your fridge and wait 24 hours. And I don't know who has 24 hours that you can just move all the stuff out of your fridge and, you know, not use it, but let's face it, nobody has time to sit around for 24 hours and wait for their fridge to defrost. So I used the old-fashioned hairdryer method and just pulled the panel back just enough to be able to get some hot air up in there, and eventually the ice did melt enough away from the styrofoam that I was able to pull that out without an issue. Make sure that you defrost this thing before you start pulling on that styrofoam, or it will break. Once the ice was melted enough to let the styrofoam loose, the panel almost fell out when I was pulling on it. It was actually fairly simple. So now that you've got all of this ready to come out, what you got to do next is remove the fan control up there on that little panel. It's you got a, on mine at least, it looks like we've got a blue and what is that color? Is that a white? Yeah. And all they do, you just pop them out these little clips right here. Just pull down on the clips, and this whole little control panel should pull right out of the fridge, just like that. So now I can remove this entire panel from the inside of my fridge. So you can see this is, you got this plastic piece, you've got a layer of styrofoam, and then you've got this metal like drip pan channel on the inside of this thing to help channel the water. And that's actually what was frozen on the inside. That's why it wasn't coming out very easily. So I'm just going to set this down here. And now we can go in here and look at the back of the fridge. So obviously these are the cooling coils and the fins and everything. And looks like this one got bent up a little bit. Not sure how that happened. I'm sure it was me though. This has never been opened. So what happens on these refrigerators? This is where what makes your fridge nice and cool. So the water back here on the back of that little silver drip pan, it all goes down here into this channel. Runs right down here. So when that happens, you've got this heating element, much like what you'd see in like the bottom of a dishwasher that's attached in here also. So that heating element has this little tiny piece of metal right there. It has this little tiny piece of metal that goes down into a drip channel into, I don't know exactly, I don't think it drains outside. Ours isn't connected to an outside hose, but I guess it goes down somewhere where it is then evaporated out of the back of the fridge. So that little piece of metal is not enough to keep this from icing over. It will for a time, but in the long run, whoever designed the fridge did not make that little piece of metal long enough to extend down in the hole to keep it from icing over like this has. As you can see, I mean, this is one solid chunk of ice all the way across. I mean, literally from this side all the way over. It's one giant piece. So then as this thing condenses, the water doesn't have anywhere to go. It runs down the back of your refrigerator wall, and then you end up with a nice little puddle of water down here in the bottom. So simple, quick, easy fix. Once you get this thing off, defrost this out. Make sure that the water is actually draining all the way down where it needs to go. If you've got an ice pick or something that you can get down in there that's pretty small, you can clear that channel out. I'm just going to continue on with the hairdryer. Probably won't take too long. The easiest thing to do for this is leave this little metal tab in place, and you need to take a piece of copper wire that's, I don't know, you can use any sort of like power line that you might have if you are hooking up any sort of car stereo equipment, or if you're using if you're hooking up any sort of electronics, anything like that. All you have to do is just strip out take all the insulation off that piece of copper wire, wrap it a few times around here. You can do this more if you want to use a couple pieces. That's fine. That's what I'm going to do. You just take a couple pieces, wrap them around here, twist them off, and then just feed them down in this little channel. That way, when this heating element heats up, that copper will draw the heat down into the drip channel and will keep this from freezing up like this, and then that problem will be solved. So, like I said, I couldn't find any videos on the internet about this, so I figured I'd take 10 minutes out of my day and make one. So, once again, if you have a Samsung refrigerator with the model RF263BEAESR, then this video is for you. And I hope that helped. This is the first time I've done like a tutorial video on YouTube, although I've been watching YouTube since 2006, whenever it launched. So I hope this helps someone out there in the world that has a refrigerator that's having this problem, and you don't feel like calling the refrigerator repairman and spending a lot of money to get this thing fixed. So I hope that helps, and I don't know, I guess leave a comment or something if it worked for you or not. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.